Welcome to the 50th anniversary of the Association of Radical Midwives. So ARM was founded in 1976, and I joined ARM in 2017 as a first-year student. My name's Lucy. I am the editor of Midwifery Matters, may have spoken to some of you already. And I want to welcome, we've got people from all over the world. We've got people from Norway, Czech Republic, Poland, Germany, and I've also heard Australia. Sweden, France, everywhere. We are international. I'm also the organiser of Birmingham ARM, and I really want to highlight to you today the value of networking and meeting with people from your local community. You will have been invited to get stickers, which should highlight your NHS regions. And we've also tried to facilitate networking with plants with colour-coded flags. If you haven't found someone with your sticker, you can go to the colour-coded flags. I'd also like to invite you to contribute to a live created poem by Amy Williams. It's about what it is to be a midwife. And you can check your digital pack. There's a QR code and a link, and the live created poem will be presented after lunch. Finally, before moving on, I'd like to acknowledge the recent deaths of independent midwife Jane Evans and doula Maddie Mahan. If you knew either of them personally or have been influenced by their work, I would like to invite you to remember them today, however you feel comfortable in doing so. So, to open the conference, please welcome two of our founding members.
Good morning. Can you all hear me just fine? Yeah, okay. I'm Marianne Scruggs. This is Judy Rogers, another founder member of ARM who originally worked as a midwife in rural Nova Scotia from 1973 to 76 and did her formal direct entry training in Bolton, finishing in 1978. I know most of you weren't alive then. She's the only midwife out of our group, our original group, who's practiced continually for 50 years. Attending more than 2,700 births. She completed a master's degree in sociological research in healthcare in 1989 at the University of Warwick, and was attending home and hospital births in England until her return to Canada in 1990, where she continued to attend home and hospital births in urban and rural settings in Ontario since 1990. She was a founding member of the first midwifery education program in 1993 in Ontario and an associate professor until 2018. For the last 12 years, she's worked as a midwife in a small rural practice with her daughter and another midwife, and plans to retire at the end of September this year for the second time.
I would also like to introduce Marianne Scruggs, one of the other founder members of ARM. She trained also as a direct entry midwife in Birmingham, qualifying in 1977. She was an independent midwife for 3 years in London before getting a Master of Science in Medical Demography and Population Studies at the University of London. Marianne was the creator and executive director of MIDERS, the Midwives Information and Resource Service, which was a highly valued and much internationally loved quarterly publication summarizing recent research for articles for many years. Marianne was also a temporary consultant for the World Health Organization in Copenhagen, and the last labor she attended was Jilly Rossers, also an early ARM member. The baby's 40th birthday is tomorrow. Jilly would be here today, but she's doing childcare so her daughter can party. Thank you.
So we have 10 minutes to tell you about the beginning of ARM, which was very difficult. I could write 4 hours on it. But I want to refer you to 2 things where you'll get a whole lot more information. And you might want to write this down. One of them is a website called HOWL, H-O-W-L, History of Women's Liberation. And you either put my name in it or Judy Rogers. And it will give you a longer story of the beginning of ARM and of MIDERS and of the ARM vision. The other place to get more information is from Elaine Carter, who is way in the back there, who has started doing audio podcasts of early members, and that will start on the ARM website in July. Yeah? And so, Elaine, can you stand up just a second? Okay. I also want to point out 2 of the midwifery luminaries in the audience, Kate Jackson and Kathy Warwick. Kate Jackson wrote Changing Childbirth. Kathy Warwick, that was only one of the things she did. And one of the things that Kathy did was be the head of RCM. Can you guys stand up? Yeah, come on. I know that there's at least 3 of us who were at the original meeting of ARM, and one of them was me, and one of them was Judy, and one of them was Susanna. Can you stand up? Susanna's come from California, but lest you think that we're all North Americans, she's a Brit. And there may be more of us original ones. There are more of original ones in the audience of people who came from the early years. Can you all stand up, please, in case people want to talk to you about it during the breaks? And there's Joe. Great. In 1986, Judy and I met and thought there might be more of us who believed in helping women to get what they wanted in birth, helping us to have excellent skills, and helping babies to have wonderful births, and for there to be less intervention in births, such as a C-section rate less than 15%, which is what WHO said it should be less than. In the beginning, we were mostly direct entry midwives trying to get through our courses. And we all felt like fish out of water there. And we all considered ourselves feminist in various ways, and we all had been affected by the large changes that had occurred in the culture over the 1960s and 1970s. Just try to imagine this. In the US, there were a lot of legal changes in that time, like women being able to get their own credit cards, being able to buy their own houses, being able to buy their own cars and get their own mortgages. That didn't happen before the mid-70s. And there were huge changes in reproductive health. Birth control pills in the late 60s, although in 69, when I got my first birth control pills, I had to say I was engaged. And legalized abortion. In the US, 1973, in the UK, 1971. There was a lot of energy at that time for lots and lots of changes. There was just a lot of energy. In 1971, the Boston Women's Health Book Collective published Our Bodies, Ourselves in newsprint, as I recall, and that book has been adapted and translated in over 34 countries. In this country, it was put together by Jill Reckerson and Angela Phillips. That book changed everything because it had sharing between women about their bodies, about their reproductive health, about their sexuality, and it has been a game changer. Can anybody who has seen that book raise their hand? Oh, good. If you haven't, get one. It was originally a newsprint, is where I read it. And in 1975, the book Spiritual Midwifery came out, and that made a big impact in birth circles. In the UK, feminism was a little different than the US. It had a lot more trade union movement influence than in the US. But all of this really colored the way our group came together and functioned. It's also important for you young'uns to understand the enormous importance of there being no internet, no personal computers, no cell phones. I was talking to brought my daughter here. She said, it's really hard to imagine that. And I went, yeah. So we learned together and we pooled our information. So we started meeting every 6th weekend, sleeping on people's floors in our sleeping bags. We were together the whole weekend and eating a lot of hearty soups, as I remember. We always started with telling our observations in our training, both good and bad. And we studied to improve our skills. We talked about different cultural needs of the women we were serving. Our goals were simple in the beginning. They were to support each other in getting through our trainings, to have better skills, to get more information, and to study. That's all in the beginning. And it started in Birmingham, the first meeting, I think. I remember a lot of going to the pub and a lot of laughing. About a year in, we grew quickly. What we lost in intimacy, and we all felt it as a loss, actually, we gained in diversity of thought. With our rapid growth, we struggled, like all movements, with structure, decision-making, membership. We would have greatly benefited from an organizational consultant, although I know there's people who disagree with me on that. It was often extremely frustrating, but we never came close, ever, to self-destruction on the altar of political correctness or beliefs. If you remember, I know you know things I'm talking about. If you remember one thing about ARM, let it be this. ARM was born out of frustration and desires of beginning midwives in order to provide better and kinder experiences for women and their babies and for midwives, in that order. I'm going to hand this over to Judy. But before I go, I want to say this. As difficult as midwifery seems to be now, don't lose heart. Stay strong for the sake of the women and the babies that you care for. Take care, and thanks for listening.
Thank you. Thank you for the introduction, Marianne. It's my great pleasure to be here today for this celebration of 50 years since a relatively small number of feminist midwifery students and midwives discovered that we shared common frustrations, well, more accurately, outrage, with the care that women were receiving in pregnancy and birth. We also identified, as Marianne said, many gaps and barriers in our own training. Keep calm and carry on was not our motto. We were both, as you might say, not backward at coming forward. Please raise your hand if you can't hear me. The reading I had done before I came to England was really from the 60s, and I was not prepared for the rising episiotomy rates, induction and augmentation rates, and the near extinction of home birth when I started my direct entry program. ARM became our sisterhood, our support group, a place for shared learning, for lively discussions and disagreements, a place for brainstorming ideas to respond to various government and NHS initiatives. For me, the most memorable document we wrote was the vision, Proposals for the Future of Maternity Services in 1986. It was a result of input from many ARM members sharing substantial, detailed thoughts, written submissions, and brought together in a clear and concise set of proposals for the direction of the UK maternity services over the next 10 years. That was 40 years ago. I became very involved with I returned to Canada in 1990, so I somewhat lost touch with exactly the changes that were happening here. So my questions for you are many. What are your experiences as midwives in the UK today? What are the experiences of childbearing people in the UK today? I know some of my ARM friends and colleagues have been very involved in the development of midwifery education degree programs and postgraduate degree programs here. How has that education prepared you to be confident and competent midwives in the UK and elsewhere? The growth of midwifery research has made such a difference to midwifery practice around the world. Again, I know many key contributors are sitting in this room today. Are you, as midwives, able to implement the results of that research in your practice? Do you know how important your work is to every woman you provide care for? The relationship in which the woman is so powerful and yet so vulnerable, as well as as well as stressful and unpredictable. You need to be paid well for your work. You need to be supported and to have time off sufficient to recharge, restore, and rejuvenate yourselves. I hope you will share your thoughts and experiences with us and other midwives from your region today. And I celebrate each and every one of you as midwives, as educators, as researchers, and as innovators. Thank you very much.
Thank you both. Now could I welcome to the stage Dr Nicky Leap.
Hello everyone. What a wonderful start to our conference today. Let's say thank you again. I'm here to introduce, is that all right? I'm here to introduce a presentation on behalf of a group of us who were involved in the early days of ARM. A year ago, a small group of founder and early members of ARM started an informal online discussion group. We got together with everybody that we could find at that time who we knew, and we started sharing memories, photos, and early ARM publications. They started to flow. Thank you. On the table out in the hall, you'll find a selection of those ARM publications, early ARM publications, and we encourage you to come and look at them. Pick them up, read them, put them back, please don't take them away. There you'll find these wonderful little conference booklets that were written before each of the conferences in the early 1980s. They're really worth delving into. You'll also find a whole lot of the early ARM newsletters, which I encourage you to take out of their plastic sleeves and have a look inside, because they're full of the most riveting material. You'll also find a whole lot of merch involving owls and Pinard stethoscopes, owls that go out at night and are considered to be very wise. In July last year, we started to engage with contemporary ARM members around how we could celebrate 50 years of ARM. This led to an invitation for some of us to write articles, which will be in the next edition of Midwifery Matters, and to participate in this conference. We made a decision that rather than have one or two of us up here, we would make a video to include as many voices of early ARM midwives as we could. So people in our group were invited to send 1 or 2 minute video clips to Jane Grant, who has put them together into a wonderful video showing people's memories of early ARM, which you're going to see in a minute. So the common cry amongst our group tends to be, I just couldn't have got through it all without ARM. And that was certainly the case for me. I joined ARM in 1979 when I started the last direct entry course in London. And thereafter, for 15 years, over 15 years, I hosted monthly ARM meetings in my front room in Lewisham. I don't think they all involve bottles of wine. Okay. As Marianne and Judy have commented, the influence of the women's movement and feminism was very, very clear in the way we engaged with each other and in the way we organized ourselves. Little things like feminist process, starting all meetings with a round, non-hierarchical sharing of ideas, skills, storytelling, understanding what it means that the personal is the political, and motivation to write and speak out about how the patriarchy, power relationships, and language affect our everyday working and personal lives. 5 years after that initial meeting of ARM in '76, there were 17 regional contacts throughout the UK in 1981. 3 years later, in 1984, the number had doubled to 34. ARM members were attending local and national meetings in each other's homes throughout the UK. We were a cohesive group with a range of collaborative activities. And as Marianne pointed out, it's hard to imagine how that would be possible in that pre-digital age. We published. We weren't constrained by academic pressures to publish or perish. We just wrote about the things we talked about in ARM meetings. This is an example. It's a little bit later, it was 92 actually, but it was published in the Nursing Times, who for a while gave us a platform, and it was full of ARM members writing about things we thought about. It was a treat, really. It's much harder to do that today. Okay, so in the early days, the regional groups took it in turn to put together the newsletters. And that's why I think you should really go and have a good look at them on the stall, because they are extraordinary. We did everything: design, illustration, layout, gestetner printing, circulation through the post, a lot of sticking on of stamps. And this is an example of a newsletter that we put together in the South London group. Overtly political and rather sepia. I'm not sure why we decided it was sepia, that edition. It was possibly because there was an article on midwifery history related to the closing of the British Hospital for Mothers and Babies, which some of us were campaigning around. Also involved in the closure and then the occupation of the South London Hospital for Mothers and Babies in Clapham, on Clapham Common. Over 10 months, hundreds of women actually camped in that hospital to try and stop it from being closed down. And it included 2 young birth activists, one of whom was pregnant, who decided that she'd give birth to the last baby born in the South London Hospital for Women and Children, and certain ARM members gave her a bit of a hand. You can also see that, I tell you what, I was born in that hospital, and I took my mother on a visit during the occupation, and she was celebrated by all the women there. She said she remembered the light fitting in the room where she laboured for 48 hours, looking at the light fitting. You can see that there's an article there by Judy about her diary working in Kenya. We would always try and include articles from midwives working, ARM midwives working overseas. Okay. We protested. My goodness, did we protest. Up at the top there, you can see we took our ARM banner to lots of different places. Right there, it's at the Greenham Common Women's Peace Camp at a protest down there. The Birthrights Rally in 1982, many of you will remember if you were there, it was huge. Over 5,000 people rallied outside the Royal Free Hospital in London because women were being refused the right to get off the bed and choose the position for their giving birth. You can just see our Radical Midwives banner in the big picture on the side, where we were marching in support of the reinstatement of obstetrician Wendy Savage. Okay. And we protested outside the RCM when we didn't think they were doing enough. Actually, these two protests were around two really significant things. One was the Briggs report, which somebody mentioned earlier, where midwifery was about to be incorporated in, midwifery education was about, and regulation was about to be incorporated within nursing. It was a very big campaign to stop that happening. And then, of course, there was the Peel report we were protesting about, which said that 100% of women should be giving birth in hospital. So there we were with our little placards. We did a lot more than just hold up placards. We wrote masses to the RCM to encourage them in their efforts, which were ultimately successful. We promoted home birth. I was taught in my training that midwives are guardians of the normal. And we took that very seriously. And the perfect way to be guardians of the normal, it seemed to us, was to promote normal birth. We had two groundbreaking pieces of research that we drew on in carrying out that work. Marjorie Tew in 1977, who concluded, looking at perinatal mortality data, that even for high-risk mothers, non-hospital settings like home births or GP units were not safer than large consultant hospitals. And Rona Campbell and Alison McFarlane's wonderful work analysing statistics at the National Epidemiology Unit, resulting in Where to be Born, the debate and the evidence in 1987, concluded there is no evidence to support the claim that the safest policy is for all women to give birth in hospital. At that time, maternity units in the NHS had a statutory duty to provide a midwife if a woman insisted on giving birth at home, even if she was considered to be high risk, even if she was living in a teepee. They had to provide a midwifery service. This gave women agency and resulted in a lot of home births that would perhaps be refused in later years to come. It gave women agency, and there were very few free births. We were strategic in lobbying and influencing policy. ARM started promoting the importance of midwifery continuity of care as early as 1978 in this booklet, which was a submission to the House of Commons subcommittee on perinatal and neonatal mortality. And in that, the proposal was that continuity of care is safer than fragmented care, and the argument is made in that document. Over the ensuing years, ARM members sat on multiple committees of childbirth related to organisations like AIMS, the NCT, Maternity Alliance. We also acted as an unofficial think tank for the RCM. They would invite us for lots of informal meetings to discuss ideas with us. And of course, as Judy mentioned, we created a vision. The principles of the ARM vision are really, really important to understand. That the relationship between the woman and the midwife is fundamental to good midwifery care. The woman is the central person in the process of care, woman-centred care. Informed choice in childbirth for women, full utilisation of midwife skills, continuity of care for all child-rearing women, which we later changed to continuity of carer to make it explicit what we meant. Accountability of services to those receiving them. Care should do no harm to mother and baby, and that care should be based in the community. The principle of those vision principles can be seen in subsequent maternity service policy documents in the UK. And in the mainstream development of radical midwifery continuity of care models, the development of those in many other countries, especially New Zealand, Canada, and Australia. They can also be seen in the new ARM vision on the front of the ARM website. But interestingly, recent in 2025, all of those World Health Organization documents promoting midwifery continuity of care and giving us guidance on how they should be implemented. I don't have to tell this audience that we're all drawing still on what is considered to be the gold standard, in spite of all the wonderful other literature to support midwifery continuity care. But the gold standard that people will take notice of are randomized controlled trials in the Cochrane, which has just been updated a couple of years ago, and still shows that women receiving midwifery continuity care less likely to experience a caesarean section or an instrumental birth, less likely to experience episiotomy, more likely to experience spontaneous vaginal birth, and report a positive experience. So the recent Cochrane updated review includes 17 trials involving 18,533 randomized women. The earliest randomized controlled trial to be included in the Cochrane review, it's still there, is the Know Your Midwife trial, published in 1989, designed and conducted by Caroline Flint and her colleagues at St George's Hospital, Tooting. In that randomized controlled trial, the researchers were able to show that midwifery continuity care was associated with improved maternal satisfaction, women feeling empowered, more able to discuss problems, better prepared. There was less obstetric intervention, including augmentation of labour and intrapartum analgesia. The conclusion and recommendation are really important to consider. The conclusion was that the model of care is feasible in the NHS. There was nothing like it happening then. And the recommendation, of course, that it should be introduced widely. This did actually radically influence the UK's approach to the development of maternity services. Okay. In the Know Your Midwife trial, the principles of the ARM vision were embedded in its design. Like all of us, Caroline Flint, who is here today, continues to champion the principles of the vision. She's now going to tell her story of how people came together at her house with their written contributions in preparation for collaborative writing of the vision.
I joined ARM in 1976. It was a huge relief, meeting up with other people who felt like you did. Women, as ever, were being pushed about and their bodies messed about and interfered with. Midwives were being bullied. Those who stood up to the system were very isolated and alone, and sometimes you felt you were going mad. At those ARM weekends, we met up and talked about the terrible things that we'd seen that week against women, about the terrible things that had happened to us that week. It was very cathartic, but it didn't get us very far. Just healed us, I suppose. Then one weekend, Marianne Scruggs, who I think is one of the greatest visionaries in midwifery that I've ever met, said, we need to write down what our vision of the midwifery profession would be. And so we set up a vision weekend. The vision weekend took place in my house. Everybody came to stay at my house. And the reason for my house was because, very unusually in those days, I had a computer and a printer. You were only allowed to come to the vision weekend if you had already written at least a page of your thoughts on the future of the midwifery profession, how you wanted it to develop. We thrashed through all the documents and cobbled together the vision. Somebody's mother paid for the vision to be printed, and we sent a copy to every MP, every member of the Royal College of Midwives Council, every member of the English National Board, everybody we could think of. The vision ended up being the basis for changing childbirth, better births, the Winterton report. In fact, all of the reports following on from when we published it, the vision is still relevant and simple to set up where there is willingness. It's time to get back to the vision. Thank you.
We're now going to look at the video that Jane Grant has put together, the voices of early members of ARM who contributed to this presentation.
So it was a social support sisterhood that was incredibly sustaining, especially in those early years when, as somebody who'd come from university with a degree into a training that was at the time, I didn't even have a diploma attached to it. It was an experience-based, skills-based, professional-based training. And it was, although I loved that, it was also really, really helpful to have a group of people who were pushing the boundaries, who were trying to make things better, and who had a sustained and curious and logical way of thinking about how we might make a difference in the future, all wrapped up with telling stories and appreciating the kind of emotional and psychological components of what we were doing and what we needed to do with each other to make all of us feel safe and secure in what at times seemed like a difficult environment. So I just wanted to register that and to say how much ARM helped, for me anyway, in those early years as a new direct entrant midwife or as a direct entrant midwife student, at a time, again, when both of those things were not very common.
I was really in need of some moral support and finding some like-minded people. I actually had done nursing before, and I had done one of the very first nursing degrees at Manchester University, which was very innovative, really encouraged us all to become critical thinkers and curious and questioning. And then I went and did my midwifery. The midwifery was only a year because I was a nurse already. And it was very much rote learning based, and there was really no questioning encouraged at all. I just couldn't understand. We were being told that babies had to be fed 3 minutes on each breast for the first 2 or 3 days, and then up to 5 minutes, and all women needed an episiotomy, or all primogravidas and anyone with a previous episiotomy scar. So that was just about everybody. So it was all very shocking for me. And then I found ARM, and I found a group of women who were also questioning practice, and realising the importance of evidence, just questioning the way things were being done, and also very committed to the importance of working with women. So there was a very strong kind of feminist foundation to it all, which really appealed to me.
So I started going to meetings while I was waiting to do my training, which was great because I got to learn a lot and get a pretty realistic idea, I think, of what my training would involve. So my early memories are one of really just enormous support. I don't know if I would have made it through my midwifery training without it. I had a lot of anger about what was going on in the maternity services for women and midwives, and having ARM, it was just amazing to be able to express that and have people take me in, listen to me, understand me. We certainly did not agree on everything. We had quite animated discussions, the name of ARM being one of them. That was an ongoing discussion for quite a while. Yeah, I just have very fond memories of it. I am so glad I was involved with it, and it was just a really important time for me in my life, I think. So, rock on ARM.
Hello, I'm Jenny Spinks from the other side of the world. I was a student nurse attending a women's health conference in Sheffield when I learned about the all-pervasive disempowerment of birthing women in hospitals. It was gut-wrenching, and I learned that midwives potentially had a pivotal role in turning things around. I decided to be a midwife. It was the era of women's consciousness-raising groups and learning that the personal is the political. I was lucky to be living in Sheffield with Pippa McKeith. We went to a weekend gathering of a group of student midwives who were sharing their experiences of working in hospital and how they were working to support women to be in charge of their birthing. I felt a real bonding. We went to other weekends. One evening in Oxford, we came up with the name Association of Radical Midwives. Radical meaning connecting with the roots of midwifery. For hundreds of thousands of years, women sharing knowledge of being with birthing women. We were political activists lobbying 50 years ago without email and mobile phones. But the overall sense that I have of those early days of ARM is how close we were, sharing the joys and horrors we had experienced since the last time we were together. Those sharings made it much easier to connect from a space of solid sisterhood with birthing women.
I was a passionate wannabe midwife, involved with ARM from the very first meetings. After the birth of my second child, I started applying to direct entry courses, soon to discover that being a mother was not the advantage I thought it would be. At 3 separate interviews, the entire line of questioning was about who will look after your children? What if they get ill? The concept of a working mother was alien, and there was no acknowledgement that maybe being a mother could be an asset to midwifery. But my determination to become a midwife took me on to the graduate SRN training, always thinking I would do midwifery after. Throughout, ARM was there as a support, a sounding board, and offering great sisterhood. I was an honorary midwife in the group. Sadly, after 3 years of becoming a nurse, I had no energy left to do any further training, though my ongoing professional career was about women and young people's health. ARM for me was an oasis of courage and critical thinking in the midst of increasing medicalization and moves away from hands-on midwifery.
My most valued memory is being involved in the writing of the vision. It was such an important document in kind of describing where we thought the UK maternity services needed to be. A very fun memory that I have was after we had had a meeting at someone's house in Oxford. One weekend we had been to the pub on Saturday night, and walking home we were trying to decide what the name of our new group should be called. And I remember suggesting it needed to have the initials ARM because every day when I went to work on the labor floor as a student, there was a whiteboard with people's names who were in labor, and invariably beside many of them was written in large black marker, ARM, ARM, ARM. So we worked on that bridge walk home from the pub, and came up with the Association of Radical Midwives eventually. And to this day, it's still causing some angst, I think, and quite rightfully, the definition of radical is constantly being reminded that it is as of the roots. We weren't thinking of that at the time. Truthfully, we were thinking it was radical to be wanting women to have a say, and continuity of care, and home births as well as hospital births being offered. So that was the beginning, and many years later I moved back to Canada and found the model of midwifery care was as we had described it in the vision. And so I got great satisfaction from that and have since.
We ended up doing campaigning. It was so exciting. We worked with childbirth groups, we worked with women's groups, also with the Royal College of Midwives, and we did a lot of lobbying in Parliament. The Nurses, Midwives and Helpers Act was going through in 1978, 79, following the Briggs report. So there was a lot of campaigning to do to make sure we didn't lose midwifery. We had a midwifery committee to discuss everything, and we weren't subsumed in nursing.
One thing that ARM did was give us contacts with people like Ian Chalmers and in the National Perinatal Epidemiology Unit. And I once was in labor war with a woman who was about 4 centimeters, and a student doctor came in and said, you really should rupture her membranes. And I said, did you see that study that Chalmers did? A randomized control trial comparing 7,000 women who had artificially ruptured membranes early and the ones who were left to naturally have ruptured membranes. And it showed it wasn't a particularly positive outcome, the ones that had the ruptured membranes. And he said, well, that's only one study. And I said, well, it's 14,000 women, and I'm not going to rupture her membranes. So I don't know if I would have been able to do that if it hadn't been for ARM and the contacts ARM gave me.
I was so supported by ARM, and it gave me power. It gave me power to stick my head above the parapet. One little example is when I was working as a community midwife, and I went into the GP unit with a woman in labour, and I made the decision I was not going to shave her pubic hair, and I was not going to give her an enema. But that was the policy at that time. I feel as if I could make that decision because I knew there was research behind me that would back me up, that that was a good decision. There was also a whole group of my trusted ARM
who would support me, whatever happened. It was powerful, and I believe ARM made me a better midwife.
Of all the ways that ARM used to meet up, I remember the weekends most vividly. In and around all the activities, we really got to know each other. One weekend, 2 midwives stopped me in the doorway and asked me about my views on abortion. I didn't know them very well, but I suspected our views were different. After sharing the ideas underpinning a woman's right to choose, I asked them about their views. I was surprised that despite being anti-abortion, a woman's choice was as fundamental to their position as to mine. That conversation was driven by curiosity and respect, not by any expectation of agreeing or someone winning. Also, we were united passionately in our objectives for the maternity services. I recently read Jan Jennings' written submission to the Vision Weekend. At the end of it, she apologizes for lack of originality, so little time. She'd recently been accepted at Theology College, and the vicar had told her, "Jan, you'll have to leave Radical Midwives. You'll be too busy." She replied, "I can't. They're my best friends." I think a lot of us felt the same.
ARM has been my midwifery tribe since I joined as a student midwife in 1981. One of the things about any tribe is that elders move on to the other side, especially over 50 years. So today I wanted us to remember both those of you who knew them and those of you who never had that pleasure, ARM members who taught us, guided us, campaigned with us, challenged us, and made us laugh, but who aren't physically with us today to celebrate. So, in no particular order, let's remember Meg Taylor, Jan Jennings, Ishbel Karga, Margaret Jarrett, Mary Cronk, Tricia Anderson, Beverly Beach, Jane Evans. Now, I'm aware that I will have omitted to mention some, so please add them in your hearts.
Mavis Kirkham was invited to do the roundup of this presentation. Sadly, she's unable to be with us, but she has sent a message to you all, which I will read. "I'm sorry I can't be with you all, but arthritis and elderly decrepitude prevent it. So it falls to me to round off presentations I haven't heard. When we started ARM, we never thought we'd be here in 50 years' time, nor did we think that the service we saw as so urgently needing improvement would, in some respects, be worse in 50 years' time. I think that the early work of ARM is important and still relevant for 3 reasons. Firstly, for mutual support. I'm sure a lot has already been said about this. As well as our vital experiences of receiving support, ARM is important as a safe setting where the giving of support can be modelled and learned. This is crucial when NHS midwives are constantly exhorted to be empathetic and give support to those in their care, while often experiencing little support within their working lives. I have learned so much in this respect from the love and kindness of ARM midwives, as well as from the way we have tried to structure our own discussions. In a time of increasingly divisive pressures in our society, this becomes more and more important. Secondly, lobbying. It's a sign of effective lobbying that it's invisible in retrospect and succeeds in making what were its radical objectives later seem inevitable. When we started ARM, the Briggs report was already published, and the subsequent Project 2000 for nursing and midwifery education proposed a common foundation programme for 2 years in which midwifery would have been lost amidst the greater numbers of student nurses. If that had been implemented, we would have lost midwifery education and thereby midwifery as a separate profession. ARM stood alone at first in opposing Project 2000 and managed to convince the rest of midwifery. Thus, our aims were achieved, though ARM received no credit for the achievement. Similarly, we published the vision advocating continuity carer, and a few years later, the RCM published its vision with similar aims, but no acknowledgement of our groundbreaking document. Sadly, the vision remains unimplemented in this country. Thirdly, and perhaps most important, is the vision, I mean our vision, of birth, not just our document of that name. With our membership of NHS midwives, aspiring midwives, independent midwives and childbearing women, we hold a greater breadth of vision than any one group. When the NHS and political lobbyists make it difficult to see the energizing, healing, and empowering potential of birth, we know what is both possible and necessary. We know what birth can be. From the women who start motherhood inspired to say, "I gave birth to you, and now I can do anything," to the births that excited and inspired us as midwives. In our shared experiences and stories, we know what is possible. From the midwives' haven to our support for oppressed mothers, we show solidarity where there is need. We exercise skills and are nurtured by practices which are vital. We can learn from each other, as I have, in recent years, learned so much from women who choose free birth. We can support each other, especially when oppressed, and inspire a new generation of midwives. We absolutely must, because no other professional group shows signs of doing so. 50 years ago, we felt the future of birth was in our hands. Now, it is in yours.